Hello all and welcome back to Finominal UK for another product review. In today's review we're going to be taking a look at 5 different funds to try and determine which is Britain's best income fund. So I have segregated this into 5 different categories. So let's take a look. So for the active value we're looking at Man Income, with the fund's objective is for it aims for a rising income above the markets from undervalued UK shares, so value. Also looking at active income, so Artemis Income Fund, which seeks a growing income plus capital growth from cash generative shares. Also taking a look at index tracker, so the Vanguard FTSE UK Equity Income, which tracks the FTSE index of higher yield UK shares weighted by company size. We'll also be looking at consistent payers, so S&P Global's UK Dividend Aristocrats, which aims to hold only companies with 7+ years of straight years of stable or rising dividends. And we'll also be looking at the highest yielders category, so iShares UK Dividend, which holds the 50 highest yielding UK shares weighted by yield. So you will notice also some star ratings here. So this is a new feature we have launched on Finominal now, where you will see, if I scroll over here, you'll see the ratings for these. So with the highest rating being for the Vanguard FTSE UK Equity Income, as well as the iShares UK Dividend Fund. And we've also got 4-star ratings for the Artemis Income and Man Income funds. Though you'll note the S&P UK Dividend Aristocrats is unrated. Just a note on what the stars measure. So it's a 0 to 5 rank against each fund's best matched benchmark, which is refreshed quarterly. So initially, each fund is paired with the index that best explains its returns. So you'll note that whilst these are all UK income funds, you will see different benchmarks for these in regards to the suggested benchmark on the platform. And that's just based off of having the an R-square of 0.75 and above. So all of these have R-squareds of 0.75 and above. I'm quite sure they're actually above 0.8 R-squared for these, so quite sensible benchmarks indeed for these. It's then ranked against that benchmark on multiple performance metrics and then scored on a 0 to 5 stars and refreshed quarterly. So only funds with 3 years plus of track record and a statistical validated benchmark are rated, and all others will go unranked. So why are we seeing the S&P Global Fund unranked? So it clears all the entry gates, 14 years of history and a statistically validated benchmark, but there are only 3 funds in Britain live on that benchmark in regards to the Finominal UK mid-cap, which is a 3 fund universe, 2 of which are actually the same fund. So that's the reason why we're not seeing a rating for that. But overall, very strong ratings for all of the funds we'll be analysing. So with all of this noted, let's head over to Fund Explorer. I've already put these in my watch list, top UK income funds. Now I've selected them all, I'm going to head over to the Asset Comparer for our full fund analysis. Okay, let's begin. So we're looking at data from the 28th of February 2012, where initially let's look to performance and risk cumulative returns, where overall, you can see the blue line, which is the Artemis Income Fund, has been the top performing out of all the funds we're analysing, closely tracked by the Man Income Retail Fund, so those 2 active funds showing their value there, I will note. And in regards to the worst performing funds there, that's actually the S&P Fund, the UK Dividend Aristocrats. Okay. Let's continue now. We can see rolling return, but let's look to risk versus return, where again we're seeing lower volatility for that S&P 500, S&P UK Dividend Aristocrats funds, with a CAGR of 5.94%, so not very strong, I will note. Where if we look at that, the blue dot here, we're seeing again Artemis Income Fund saw the least volatility, with the highest CAGR as well. So volatility of, we're seeing a 13.95% and a CAGR of 9.65%, so certainly positive. And that's quite close as well to that Man Income Fund as well, with a volatility of 14.54% and CAGR of 9.41%. And in regards to the index tracker, we can see for Vanguard's fund got volatility of 15.66% and a CAGR of 8.69%. And the UK iShares UK Dividend ETF, a volatility of 16.09%, so the most volatile fund in the funds we're analysing here, and a CAGR of 7.8%. Let's look now to portfolio stress testing. So we have got quite a bit of data here, I will note. So overall, looking across these, we're seeing again that Artemis Income Fund seeing across time periods quite strong drawdown protection, I will note, where if we did want to see how these funds may have looked, say during the GFC, we can use factor exposure analysis to replicate those returns. And out of all of the funds we're analysing, it looks like again that Artemis Income Fund would have seen the shallowest drawdowns. We can see the actual stats in front of us here, with the deepest drawdown coming from the iShares UK Dividend Fund. Okay, and an equal max drawdown potential of minus 43% for the Man Income, as well as the S&P UK Dividend Aristocrats Fund. Let's move over now to fundamentals. So, as we expect, majority, nearly 100% for all in equities, with for that Man Income Fund is 4% in cash, and the Artemis Income 2% in cash, and iShares UK Dividend is 1% in cash. So just residual amounts there. Interesting, we see, if we look at top 10 countries, so majority the UK, though I will note the Man Income Fund seeing 80% in the UK, 9% in Ireland, we've also got 1% in Israel, Guernsey, Bermuda, France, Switzerland, United States. So I will note for that the Man Income Fund isn't purely just UK exposure there, which is interesting to note. But for the rest of them, majority in the UK, as we would expect to see, but certainly worth noting that for the Man Income Fund there, I will say. Let's look to sectors now, where we see got 15% consumer staples. So overall, these are mainly UK funds. So we can majority weights in financials. We're noting, though I do note quite a stronger overweight in consumer staples for Vanguard FTSE UK Equity Income against the rest of the funds there we're seeing. And also the iShares UK Dividend Fund seeing an overweight against its peers in financials. Okay, so certainly worth noting. And for the S&P UK Dividend Aristocrats, we're seeing quite a considerable amount in industrials against its peers. For Man Income, a higher amount in materials against its peers. So those would be the key points I would note for the sectors of these funds. Let's look now to risk sources for these funds. So overall, from risk sources via asset classes, we can see most of that is contributed from equities. Though we have got, if we note for the Man Income Fund, we're seeing a 10% fixed income asset class risk there as well, and we can also see these idiosyncratic risk values here as well, with the two prominent ones being those two active funds as well, as we would hope to see, I would say. So, going to head over to statistics now to summarise all, where we can see of these funds, as mentioned, the highest total return was from the Artemis Income Fund with 273.35% over the total return period we're looking at, so 14.3 years, with the lowest total return coming from the S&P UK Dividend Aristocrats Fund at 128.28%. Highest CAGR again goes to Artemis Income at 9.65%, versus the lowest for the S&P UK Dividend Aristocrats at 5.94%. Lowest volatility again goes to Artemis Income Fund, as well as max drawdown to Artemis Income Fund at minus 37.14%. and given the highest risk-adjusted return Sharpe ratio for Artemis Income Fund as well at 0.59, with a close second coming in for the Man Income Retail Fund. So the two active funds there having the highest Sharpe. What we can then see, that's followed in third by the index tracker, Vanguard FTSE UK Equity Income Index with a Sharpe of 0.46, iShares UK Dividend at 0.4 Sharpe, and the S&P UK Dividend Aristocrats with the lowest Sharpe at 0.31. Looking now to the other core metrics in regards to fees, AUM, and dividend yield. So in regards to dividend yield, the highest dividend yield fund of these was the iShares UK Dividend at 4.77%, and that is followed by the Man Income Retail Fund at 4.21%. Third in was the Vanguard FTSE UK Equity Income Index at 3.99%. And then fourth being the Artemis Income at 3.47%. So worth noting that whilst we did see the best metrics in regards to risk and return, it is one of the lower dividend yielding paying funds of the stack we're reviewing here, so certainly worth noting. But the lowest dividend yield would go to the S&P UK Dividend Aristocrats Fund at 3.37%. Noting on the AUM, we can see the most popular fund in what we're viewing here. We can see is actually, should I say, the Man Income Retail Funds at 2.3 billion of AUM, followed by the Artemis Income Fund at 2.26 billion of AUM. Thirdly, being the iShares UK Dividends ETF, 1.2 billion AUM. Fourth being Vanguard FTSE UK Equity Income, 1.15 billion of AUM, and then the lowest being for the S&P UK Dividend Aristocrats Fund. Noting for product fees, so we can see the Artemis Income Fund has a total product fee of 0.8%, so relatively expensive, I will say, but certainly not as eye-watering, I would say, as the Man Income fund at 1.65% for this particular share class we're reviewing here, which has, of the share classes, was the one with the most AUM that we're currently reviewing. And we can see that's comparable to the index tracker, Vanguard FTSE UK Equity Income, the cheapest of the funds here at 0.14%. And then we've also got the iShares UK Dividend at 0.4% and S&P UK Dividend Aristocrats at 0.3%. So, as was the goal for this product review, 5 funds, 1 verdict, and that verdict I'm going to lean towards the Artemis Income Fund. In truth, as it's of all the funds we've analysed, it has outperformed consistently, all of them, with the lowest maximum drawdown, highest risk-adjusted returns, and also at least volatility as well. Though it certainly wasn't the highest dividend yielding fund, and obviously this is Britain's best income fund, I will note. But in regards to the other metrics that we saw, I would say I'm quite comfortable to put the verdict on that particular fund. Though, of course, I will note the highest dividend yielding fund being that iShares UK Dividend ETF. But yeah, so I do hope that was helpful and informative. And if there are any other funds or portfolios you'd like me to review next, please let me know in the comments. And as always, please do like and subscribe, and we'll see you all in the next one. All right, thanks all.